Hello everyone and welcome back to SML. I'm very excited about this new series that we are doing called Timothy and Transitions. That's very cool, I like it. And the reason it's called Timothy and Transitions is because we're looking at the life of Timothy, who you should know is a young leader within the church. In fact, Paul leaves him at the church that's in Corinth to be a leader. We're going to be looking at that, but I want to read very quickly from Hebrews 13 verse 7. It says, "Remember your leaders, those who spoke to you the word of God. Consider the outcome of their way of life and imitate their faith." Before we continue, I want to tell you that every single believer in Jesus Christ is called to lead in one way or another. So if you feel like you're not a leader and you're just a follower, I've got news for you. You are called to lead in one respect, in one way or another. You are called to this thing called leadership. And it is important that as believers, we are leaders in our community, we're leaders with one another, and we're caring for those who are around us. So the first thing I want to say to you, and I want to be as quick as possible, get to the point as quickly as possible, and have one of the shortest videos at SML, if that's possible. And so I'm going to go straight into the first point. And the first point is, to be a leader, you must first learn how to follow. That is right, you need to learn how to follow. You can never learn how to be a leader by being a leader from the start. Good followers are starting to imitate what their good leaders are doing. I've always found it really encouraging, but also really arrogant. It sounds arrogant, that Paul says, imitate me as I imitate Christ. And I think, wow, Paul thinks he's getting it right, but he says, no, it's actually not really about that. It's Paul saying, the times I'm imitating Christ, imitate me. So in other words, imitate Christ in your leadership, imitate Christ in your life. Paul himself had to learn under people. All of the disciples learned under Jesus Christ. Every other leader within the church had to learn how to follow before they could be a leader. Why do you think it's important to be a follower before you become a leader? Why do you think it's important for you to be a follower before you can become a leader? It's vital that you choose good leaders to follow, because we can follow all sorts of leaders down the wrong path and lead to death, and that leads to death and destruction. Can you imagine following after them? I pray that none of us would. So, first things first, to be a leader, you must first learn how to follow. Timothy followed Paul. Paul was pouring into his life. So actually what I'm telling everyone, what I'm saying today is, we need to be doing discipleship. We need to be caring for one another. We need to be teaching one another. We need to submit ourselves to discipleship with people who have gone ahead of us, and we need to be discipling others who are behind us, not because they're lesser than us. They're behind us maybe because they've only just come to know Christ, or maybe we've been experienced in learning, and maybe we're lucky enough to have spent a bit of time studying the Bible for ourselves. And so we need to be discipling so that there are more leaders. So to be a leader, you must first learn how to follow. The second thing I want to say today is, followers are faithful. And so every single one of us are called to be a leader in one way or another, right? And I said that right at the beginning of the video, and I want you to take that to heart. But there are going to be moments, there are going to be occasions where you are called to be a follower and not lead. When we are called to be a leader, we need to be faithful. But when we're called to be a follower, we need to also be faithful. We can't just lump it all on the leader and hope that he's going to do it and everything's going to be okay. He or she is going to do it. And everything is going to be okay. Because that is not the role of the leader, and that is not the role of the follower. The follower is to learn from the leader and start to imitate what is going on. Why is leadership so important? Why do you think leadership is so important? Discuss it with someone. Drop a comment. whatever it may be. Why do you think leadership is so important? The third thing I want to speak about in terms of transitions and leadership and Timothy and the life of Timothy, as we delve in for the next couple of weeks into his life and his leadership and all that comes with it, is that wherever leaders go, they're a living example of Jesus Christ. Wherever leaders go, they're a living example of Jesus Christ. Some of you might serve in a ministry at church already. Some of you might not. Some of you might be stepping away. Some of you might be stepping into a more of a leadership role. I want to encourage you, no matter what it is, whether you are pouring juice, putting out the biscuits, whether you are sweeping up afterwards, putting the chairs away, whether you're the one doing the talk or leading the game or leading the worship, or you are just, like learning the instrument on the side. If you're the sound guy, if you're the computer guy, girl, lady, you are a leader. You are vital. You need to be leading like Jesus would lead. And you need to be following and imitating how Jesus would do things. There is something that we need to recognize, and it is that every single one of us needs to be aiming towards the leadership roles wherever we find ourselves. Wherever we find ourselves. Every single one of us is a leader. The transition from follower to leader can be difficult at times, because as a follower you are imitating and you're looking up to the leader and you're saying, okay, cool, he did this or she did this and I'm cool with that, but I would have done something different. As you become the leader, a lot of the decisions that as a follower you would just go with are now on your shoulders as the leader. And so there's a lot of different things, and these transitions can be difficult, but there are always people around to help. My encouragement to you is, if you've been a follower and you're just following and following and following, and you're not even pushing yourself to follow well, push yourself, push harder. Christ called you to be something in his kingdom. Salt and light. We're called to be that. We're not called to be mediocre. We're not called to be half-hearted. We're not called to be lukewarm. We are called to be on fire. And in doing that, we are going to naturally move from following to leadership. The big theme for today is really about the example that we set for people around us. It doesn't matter if we're a leader yet or not. It doesn't matter if it takes 10 years to get to a point of leadership. It really doesn't matter. What I'm saying is, wherever we are, we need to be a leader. We need to exhibit those characteristics. What is important is that we set an example that honors and glorifies Jesus Christ. This is what it's about. Paul left Timothy in charge at Corinth. Timothy was young. It doesn't matter if we're young. Well, you guys are young. I'm getting old quite quickly, catching up to Brett. But it doesn't matter if we're young. If we are following hard after Jesus Christ, if we are discipling and we are following our leaders who are imitating Christ, we are going to be setting an incredible example. What kind of example are you setting right now? What kind of example have you been setting since lockdown? Since the beginning of the year, before any of this happened this year? As we move back into what could be called normal, what kind of example are you setting? Are you learning how to follow so that you can be a good leader? Are you faithful? And are you a living example of Jesus Christ?